Okay, let's try to fix the world. So, the main issue that we have at the moment, war. Some people think it is impossible to stop it, but humans, we have a lot of biases. We think that what has not been done in the past cannot be done in the future. So then it is possible. We tend to have an interconnected world. So it means that eventually the flow of communication in the future gonna be universal, whether we like it or not. What we call the multipolar world will be temporarily. It won't be forever. Uh, so then we have um, why war starts. So we can say that imagine, I'm just gonna try to draw in a simple way, but I try to make it as visual. This is the first video that I do in this way. So okay, let's say we have a group of people. These people are units, yeah, and this behaves as a group. Then we do have another group, and in the world, yeah, we share with many groups. There is not only one. Let's call it, this is people, huh? They are all humans. They are all dots. Just like the, do you understand this when you once you start to do Aboriginal art? Like we are, all humans are dots, just units. But sorry, that's the AI making an intervention. Yeah, so as I explained in other videos, I perceive this as attacks because I have never consent for them to use this technology upon me. Now, there are many groups. Well, more or less war started because there is scarcity. So these groups are in different places. But if you see in South America, you have groups that never went like too big in the jungle or too populated. Partly because you will have a lot of viruses, a lot of kind of poisonous um, yeah, animals, etc. So you have that in places that were cooler, uh, civilization tend to organize better because you have to plan for the winter. Then planning becomes essential as the seasons are more marked. Then you will have that places in which, let's say, you have a lot of prosperity. Uh, Planning to survive is not as essential as, let's say, immediate risk to survival. Let's say if you are walking on the jungle and you see a poisonous animal, you have to put, let's say, cognitive effort in being attent 24 hours wherever you go. But you don't think about, I have to plant for another, I don't know, another trees, or I have to worry to grow the fish in the river. You don't plant for this because there is plenty of resources. But when you go further to the north, resources are limited. Why? Because you have to consume a lot of energy to keep yourself warm during the winter. Then to the date, Europe has strong winters for which the consumption of energy still being one of the main problems to solve. Then let's assume this group, in order to survive, needs to go out gather resources. And afterwards, after it gathered the resources, it has to come back. Yeah. So the group gather resources and come back. In the old days, you will have that whatever is the resource, it is a resource. It is a resource because it carries some kind of value. So the value of the resource can be food, for instance. The resources can be, let's say, food. It could be materials. But there is one special material which tends to be the most important material. This is metals. Metals are important because when you go to gather resources from another group, let's say this group, like the Uruks. The Uruks apparently lived 800 years without war. I read this in a notebook. This is in the anatomy of the anatomy of aggressiveness of Erich Fromm. Then you have that there are no massive graves, or there are not, let's say, graves of soldiers with weapons and in the zone that belongs to the Uruks over 800 years. From the Uruks, the part the Sumerians, and then the part Egypt, the Semites, tribes, and so on. So then we are talking even before one of the main gods that ever existed from the Sumerians, that we are talking about Gilgamesh before that. So we are talking about even matriarchal societies, not as domination of women, but as motherhood being the source of men and having a more important role than masculinity. So then we find that, let's say, because the culture of this group being in a let's say this group lives in a place that is this big, and these other groups lives in a place that is bigger. Well, then this group might try to find resources from another group. And this is technically what happened, let's say, with the Congo. It's like everyone wants a piece of the Congo. Every company gets resources from the Congo. But people there do not live in capitalism as, let's say, having unions or having cooperatives or having representative or having, let's say, a government to deal with, let's say, the taxes or resources that are going to be extracted, the tariffs. Yeah, so this is nowadays also the situation. But then when you have a group that gathers resources from another group, in the old days, the main resource becomes the metals, because from the metals you will have like long-term utility goods. You will have the creation of weaponry, spades, and shields, arrow tips, perhaps. Let's say from this you'll have like kitchen items, tools, luxury goods. Yep. And then, but most important, you will have the collection of metals for weaponry, because you can go to this group, perhaps take the metals, have an advantage in the army, creating more defenses, creating more space, arming better your army, yeah. Your group prospers, becomes bigger, and then you can go for the next group. If you stop to do this, it's likely that another group gets bigger, and it will compete for your resources. Yeah? Or will try to get your resources. Which is probably something that happened to the Greeks. As they prospered, they were well armed. Peloponnesian wars happened, but then they were invaded by the Ottomans, and democracy failed and stayed for a long time without being revived, up to the French Revolution. So then we have first the partition of systems. Yeah, this is a system, this is another system, this is another system. These are all systems. Yeah, there are different cultures, there are different religions, there are different beliefs, different system of values. These are all systems. Yeah. So then, okay, but then metals become something that has inherent value. Yeah. Because the metals can be melted, and reused. Yeah. So the metals have inherent value because they can melt and be reused for all these. Yeah. So what you want to extract from the other groups in the old days were metals. Yeah. And after you extract the metals through war, you start to develop more weapons, and the metals becomes the main, let's say, resource that you will try to get. So iron becomes the metal for the spades. The shields, you want them lighter, so you will use copper, because copper can resist just stop as weight of as worth of iron, but the copper is lighter. And then you will use even you will use silver. Sorry, these are interventions that the AI does. It's like as soon as I think about something, my mouth is not as fast, so then the AI just take the idea away, so I cannot say. So then you have silver. Yeah, the silver has certain properties, but is not as strong as the other metals. But in Europe, in Africa, etc., silver was not, let's say, there was not a main source of silver. First, it was gold. Gold was spread in all these places, and gold is very soft. You can simply mold it a little bit with your tooth if you want. It's not as iron. It's not as well as copper. So then copper also has a very interesting feature that you can melt copper with other metals like zinc, yeah, etc. But let's say then you have gold. To make an alloy with gold is more difficult, but gold is easier to keep shape and form, and also it's a kind of metal that do not react with other metals. So it's a kind of it's called a noble metal because it can perdure more through time. Let's say the iron oxides, and in the long term the iron just becomes powder, yeah, as it oxides. But the gold do not react with other metals. So it means that you could create something in gold that will stay for a long time there. Then you will have gold as a material for luxury goods. Yeah. So then you'll have that gold will be used also for coins. But let's call it bars, coins. This is jewelry. Yeah, luxury goods. Okay. So then you will have that iron and copper will be used for doing the shields, the arrows, etc. The gold will be used for luxury goods. So you will try to collect this and bring it back from every single group. You will also collect slaves. Yeah. Socrates was a slave. He was not Greece. He was from Macedonia. And he got citizenship and became a free man. And he was killed by the barbars. Just to put that example. And then, okay. So I think he was famous simply because he was the one that participated the most in democracy, and also taught everyone a lot of stuff, whatever, but still being a great reference for the Western society, democracy, and values. Then we are talking about a situation in which, okay, these systems eat each other, yeah, through time. So let's say after the Peloponnesian Wars, then the Greeks will not look as divided; they will look more united, yeah. And then you start to create new systems, like perhaps after the Second World War, then you have NATO, and you have the Soviet Union, yeah. So then we have that afterwards we tend to unite. So in a more, let's say, sometimes not necessarily in a human-based value, but because we are biased, then we have that we are united we are united by ethnicity, language, geography, religion, etc. So this is more or less what happened to every single group, yeah? So this is more or less what happened to every single group, yeah? But then you have systems like the European Union, in which, let's say, language is not there. Then you have systems that are not united by geography, like, let's say, what is called the Western world, or what is called, let's say, well, there are not many examples. You will have people who speak the same language in different places. Okay, language is is a very important factor. Yeah, I forgot that one. Because language creates also culture. Okay, so perhaps in the old days, one of the let's say one of the situations is that when the Spanish came to South America, they imposed, especially in the area of Ecuador, one language for all the natives, and then all those natives took that language as the native language plus Spanish. So then they start to share a kind of common culture. I don't write culture here because culture is made from these other, let's say, preconditions. Yeah, ethnicity creates culture, religion creates culture, geography creates culture, language creates culture. Culture is not what unites people. Is actually culture is what develops from what unites people. But we are talking about the most abrupt forms of, uh, let's say, factors for which people see themselves as one group. Yeah. Then from geography, we start to see that we have alliances, military alliances, that in which geography is not the main issue. You don't have to be next to another person to create an alliance. Let's say, well, language. You have a lot of examples. Let's say in the old Yugoslavia, they used to speak different language. Yet it was a country that stayed united for a long time. The Soviet Union is another example of this kind of groups. What we call the Western world, including Europe, or the European Union. Everyone speaks different language, etc. We have that, well, religion. Religion is still being religion is a whole conversation, because from religion you have what is called the sacred book. Okay, and this sacred book comes with knowledge that define other things. Okay, and if we go into this conversation, then we won't see the big picture. I'll try to bring a macro perspective in it to solve later. So then we have that geography becomes something that also that unites people, because actually, there is one of these fights also for material resources, etc., is land. So we have land as one of the reasons for war. Okay. These here are the reasons for war. And we are talking about in the old days. Then when we have Second World War, then the situation became ideological, and it was, so this is, I'm talking about everything is this is all pre Second World War. Okay. Yeah, this is pre-Second World War. Okay, so then you will have as well the Chinese preparing in winter for doing economics and for the war that starts in spring, etc. And we are talking about the warring states. We are talking about the formation of alliances, the very fluid system of war. Well, I don't know how to tell economics. Let's say the economics in China traditionally had been not separated from war. Whilst in the West, ideologically, we believe that the economic system of capitalism makes you free. But I'm one of the examples that I'm not free, economic-wise. Then, okay, but that's another conversation. So let's say I cannot compete with companies if I start my business. I cannot compete with them. But okay, that's another situation. But again, if we go into that rabbit hole, we end up in cybernetics. Then this is the next thing where we are going. Second World War technically started because the Germans were humiliated and re-humiliated. And that common humiliation made them feel stronger as a group. And then technically they were uneducated after the First World War. During the Second World War, the people was totally uneducated. They will have a kind of, most of the population was not educated. The schooling system during Hitler was used for propaganda. So then you have a very vulnerable, let's say, people. And this is what happened. In the old days, you will have, let's say, countries with lesser education than others. And the countries that have better education will have a better matrix, social cohesion, a better, let's say, intertwined relations of solidarity or dynamics of prosperity. Yeah. The more, let's say, you see it with the machines. The more intelligent is an AI, the more it tends to cooperate. Now, you have also these experiments in which you create a machine that do not cooperate but try to take advantage of the other machines. The other machines learn that you cannot cooperate with that machine does not cooperate, then that machine gets isolated. And when you have these experiments of dynamics to see which dynamic can have the more earnings in the long term, comes to be the machine that cooperates the most, because it never loses an opportunity to cooperate and earn, even if the machine has been before taken advantage of for cooperation, because it's the only machine that always will be open. So at the very end of the game, the other machines know that they can go there to do business. Yeah. So then, okay, we have that. Okay, cooperation. Yeah, comes also when you have solved, let's say, the problem of information in society that will be education. Yeah. And now we have that in pre-Second World War as well. Let's say, let's say language. Germany invade. Germany first eliminate Prussia. Prussia was a kind of semi-state, or something that used to exist as having its own culture inside Germany before even the German Empire existed. So Prussia was, let's say, a kind of let's say, Croatia inside the Yugoslavia, or Croatia inside the Austro-Hungarian Empire. They used to always conserve their own, let's say, culture, etc. So then Hitler eliminated Prussia. He tried to homogenize everything, and he invaded Poland. Well, Austria, having, let's say, a lot of German speaking countries, that also chunks of it were cut during the First World War. Then you have that language was something that was kind of shared, kind of. So then that make the invasions easy. Yeah. So then we have that language creates a kind of group. Yeah. But through time, it's gonna be eliminated as well through technology. You can communicate with everyone in nowadays. You just need a translator. Yeah. Geography as well is not. You have the Commonwealth, you have NATO, you have the BRICS. So this kind of new systems doesn't need to share a geography. Yeah. Religion. You have the Western world being mainly Catholic, and religion is one of these. Look, religion comes to be one of three factors that always need to be solved, let's say, as one of things that could unite or divide humanity. But it requires another huge conversation, okay? But then when I think about an example in which religions live united, we are talking about Hinduism. We are talking about the old Greeks. We are maybe even the old Romans before the we are talking about we are talking about non-monotheist religions. Okay? So monotheist religions start, let's say, in the old Egypt, you have a lot of religions, a lot of pharaohs, but then becomes one person who says, I'm the only descendant from God. The pharaoh says there is only one religion, there is only one God. Then it becomes a monotheism system. Yeah. Then the Egypt falls, the Jewish escape, and a lot of Abrahamic religions flourish. Yeah. Then we have the Abrahamic religions are monotheist. The Jewish were technically the scholars of Egypt. Yeah. Partly. Well, I have to double check that properly. But they were also a kind of subclass of people, but they were also great scholars during that time. I mean, the Jewish tradition on scholarship is great. So that's how more or less how our talk gonna end. I have to divide this into talks. Okay, but then we have religion not being a factor because you could recognize other gods. Let's say Islamism acknowledges the Christian God. Islamism acknowledges other gods. Islamism is monotheist, but it does acknowledge other gods, which is very interesting. Catholicism in the old days used to acknowledge another gods. I do believe the Roman Catholic, the Vatican doctrine acknowledges other gods. They promote the interreligious dialogue, and this has been always seen, let's say, as one of the great, let's say, advances of the Vatican institution. And then we have, let's say, Erich Fromm, Anna Arendt, Adorno. Then we have the Jewish scholarship, especially those coming from the critical Frankfurt School. They say, because we are talking about the Jewish rejected by the Nazi regime, these were the best scholars at that time. They were so great that they say, hey, we cannot count on the German scholarship. We cannot count on the academics of Germany. We have to start our own doctrine, school, university, our own scholarship. We have to be critic of what's going on. We cannot count again in the academy, because this academy is corrupt. It follows an agenda. This Nazi academy is rejecting the truth. This Nazi academy is rejecting some scholars. Ideas are not flourishing. Flourishing. Then we have that. Then they are denying Plato, Socrates, the Enlightenment. They are denying everything for which the West has existed, or flourished, or stand for, or whatever. Then the Frankfurt School say we have to use our brain. We are academics. We cannot stop, even if we are rejected by the national academics, and even if we are rejected, we have to be truthful to the truth. We try to find the truth. So we're gonna be critical of everything. And then you have the critical school of Frankfurt, that it went, I don't know, up to 4 generations of great scholars. So we have great sociologists from the first generation. I'm not gonna go into the details, but okay, mostly, everyone was Jewish from that time. That was one of the, let's say, it's a kind of mini enlightenment that happened there. It has not been recognized. It has not been recognized as such important event in the development of the Western mind, but it definitely is a key event. Yeah, as big as enlightenment, I would say. Then, okay, these Jewish scholars start to say, hey, we're gonna critique everything, and then most of them also come with the idea or the discovery, like, oh shit, we are in trouble because our own religion divides humanity. We are saying that we are the elected group by God, and no other God is recognized, no other people is recognized as legitimate to enjoy this paradise, something like that. Then these Jewish scholars acknowledge that, and they continue being ethnic Jews. They continue having the practices of Judaism, but then they enter in this conundrum in which they try to solve precisely one of the great, let's say, is one of the great ambiguities of Judaism, because When we talk about the Jewish God, we talk about everything. We talk about a God that does mix well with technology, with governance. We talk about a God that is not an image. We talk about God as it is, unfathomable, incomprehensible. But then we talk about such understanding as a group that might have been, let's say, suffering through time uh, because maybe their interpretation of the universe was so pure foundationally as are the other texts of other religions, but they just continue base having a core, yeah, that such core maybe after tragedies led them to think we cannot count in others, and this is a negative mind, a negative mindset. We cannot count in others. I have you as my neighbor, that I know you because you are the son of this son that was also the father of whoever in my family. We speak the same language. We cannot count about with the barbarians. It's a sad word. So then we encapsulate ourselves. We collect the names of our people, and we're gonna rely on each other because we are sad, because we have suffered, because we are traumatized. Uh, what we have lived is what we call, let's say, outside, yeah, the evil, the demon outside the realm of God, outside who created us, yeah? So it's something like that. It's a trauma for which the Jewish people separates from humanity, saying we are the elected ones, you are not. But this is because there is another kind of religion that says, let's say the Egyptian says, this is the only God. And then the Jews say, no, our God is still being more faithful to truth, to science, to progress, to what we are as humans. Yeah? So maybe they transpose that without really going to the roots and beyond the roots, but it became a kind, maybe written as too literal because of the trauma, and they cannot remember that they were all one tribe before these sharp monotheist religions divide, let's say, each other ethnically. So let's say in India you can be more devout to one god, but that god has brothers and sisters, and you don't deny the other gods. So then religion is not necessarily one thing that unites a group or divides a group. Religion uh, can coexist. Several religions can coexist. Yeah, and ethnicity. I don't know. It's something very interesting among Latins is that you feel them as you feel them as closer. Yeah, but we don't. Oh, okay. But also this is the situation. We grew up with in Latin America. We have about 500 years of mixture. So we grew up with blonde people, with redheads, with whatever you call it, with Caucasians, people with green eyes, blue eyes, people that looks like me, like brunettes with dark eyes, people that would be, yeah, more having the, let's say, Asian features of the natives. We grew up with people that is totally black, Afro descendant. We grew up with people that is tall, that is short. We grew up with a huge mixture, and this is normal when you are in school. Most of the schools in Colombia will have this kind of mixture. At least in South America, depending on where you are, you will have different kinds of mixture. But overall, let's say, because of the colonization, uh, black slaves were spread through the colonies of Spain. So it's wherever you go, you grow up with black people. Yeah, even if today there are a lot of segregated communities, a lot of black people is still being segregated in Colombia, at least, um, because the situation has been, let's say, uh, difficult geographic access. Many groups compete for the power there, and to rescue, let's say, yeah, to rescue those communities for prosperity has been difficult through history. But again, we're talking about another trauma. So then this kind of mixture allow you, mostly between people from Latin America, to see each other as equals. Yeah, you will have sometimes a dick, you'll have sometimes an idiot that will think that is better than others, but uh, it's not my experience. It's not often yeah, what you will see among Latin Americans. No, it's like, well, this is not the conversation, but we're talking about a mixture. So, ethnicity. Ethnicity becomes a very interesting point. So, and it goes close to religion as one of the problems to solve for humanity, because let's say if you're ethnically Latin American, if you're ethnically Jewish, because check about this, you could be Latin American Jewish, and you could have two ethnicities, yeah. So Judaism is a religion and it's an ethnicity. Being from Latin America is not being religious. Being Catholic doesn't mean that you have to be from Latin America. Yeah, but you, let's say, if you are Islamic, if you are someone who is an Arab, if you speak Arab as a language, you don't have to be a Muslim, or you can be Muslim and be from Indonesia. Yeah. Then we have that Judaism is one of those ethnicities and religions at the same time, which is very interesting. It doesn't happen with many other, as far as I know, ethnics and religious, let's say, groups. So then this is something that is as far as I know, is the biggest, let's say, ethnic, let's say, features of one of the main religions. Then you have that is the ethnic and religious group, with more nationalities in the world. Yeah. So Judaism comes to be us very interesting. Let's say is that the very interesting people. Then, and I'm talking especially about the scholarship. Now, another very interesting thing is the rituals, but that I don't know myself all the rituals. Okay, but now, okay, so let's go where we are. Pre-Second World War, we have the metals having inherited value also create the economic system. Yeah, this create the economic system, and these metals create an economic system in which coins and bills are backed by gold. So then you have the economics, then you have this economic system in which you collect gold, silver from other places, and then that grows the economy. You exchange coins, bills, backed by gold. Yeah, you can exchange the bills and coins for gold. Okay, but okay, so I did a mistake just writing this. But then this was in the old days after Second World War. Another system starts. Yeah, and this is the floating currency. We are talking about the fiat. This is fiat not having any backing. So it means that you could just emit bills, and then you don't need to prove that these have any value. Yeah, which is technically the system that was imposed by the United States. But this is not an imposition like I mean, it's like very complicated. Yeah. Whoever wins a war, a huge war, imposes the system. During the Second World War, you have Europe hitting each other, extracting from the colonies. The colonies will also notice that their masters were weak, so you start to have a series of revolutions that continue post World War II. And then you have that during all this time, a country that benefited economically was the United States, because the United States was not full into the war since the beginning. So then the United States could supply help to the allies, but not necessarily was full on in exchange, of course, of riches that were coming from the colonies. So the United States enriched a lot during that time. And the enrichment also came because, well, you would have certain strikes of luck, like Nikola Tesla being born in the United States. And also um, the politics of democracy, the different states that, similar to the old Greece, will bring an amount of, let's say, this kind of huge creativity, that also through time, through with capitalism, especially post World War II, becomes this kind of or let's call it Reagan, Monroe, this, and even Wilson slowly create this mentality of individualism, in which you try to be the best entrepreneur. But individualism also means that you can develop your own personality. This is not as you are by yourself, you are alone. No, no, no. Through time, Reagan says, hey, you are alone. And then at the same time, there is another person who is the Prime Minister of UK. And, well, Margaret Thatcher says, you are alone, but also remember there is no such a thing like family. There is only the individual, like you are by yourself. This is not true, yeah? This is not true. We are born and we need about 18 years to be in community, whilst we grow and we can go to society by ourselves. In the meantime, we are always vulnerable. So family exists, even if Margaret Thatcher doesn't want it. Okay, but then floating currency creates another kind of system. After Second World War, then a few resources became super fundamental for every single system to continue existing. So we got, again, food, because people needs to eat. Let's say the populations in Europe became bigger because they colonized the rest of the world. It brought some prosperity. The population just got bigger. So then they find the need to continue exploring. It's not what, let's say, if I go down and I talk to someone in Europe, hey, you are continuing exploiting the world. I don't think that person is exploiting the world, you know? They are in an economic system that most of us don't understand. And they are doing the best for their family, and they are doing the fucking best for the world, and to actually avoid people to be exploited in the Congo and other places. Most of the people of the West is trying to do the right thing. But it's difficult, precisely as I start this video. It's like we are trying to solve the problems of the world, okay? Because when we go down to the micro sphere, we find that this is a parallel universe to the economic system as a macro. It's like we are talking about the dynamics of subatomic quantum mechanics that do not apply for the Newtonian and let's say physical world that we experience. And if we go to the macrosphere of the celestial bodies, they do have another kind of physics. So we are talking about different dimensions, yeah? So when we talk about one person trying to do the best and every single society having most of their people doing the best for the others, they, as species, they might not understand how the whole macro situation will work. Then you will find that they will need food, energy. Yeah, we are talking about fossil fuels, and they will need materials from other places, because remember, we are talking about during the 700s, 600s, 800s. They in Europe, they experienced a kind of years that even if they were fighting between them, they grew their populations bigger and so on. So now they live in a overpopulated place that do not produce or have enough materials for them to have the basic needs. Then today, for to create a war of peace, the South needs to secure resources for the North, and this is so the North does not. I mean, the suffering of the North is also somehow the suffering of the North is attenuated, yeah, because then you will have wars, and okay, so but this is the situation also. Well, I'll go to that later. But then we have food, energy, materials, and land. Okay. Land still being a factor. There is because you will try to find all the others there. So post World War II, we have that this is the reason again for which wars continue. Notice that fossil fuels was not before. So there, so we have like Roy Cassandra, this, like kind of, how can I say it? He's like a very kind historian in the way he's very kind explaining the history. So then he says something that is true. The Nazis used to have only one source of fossil fuels that used to be the main one, as there are not many producers of petrol. You have close to Norway a few, let's say, oil wells, and then you have Hungary as the as another fuel, source of petrol. Then the Nazis secured these places, these sources of fuel. But according with him, one of the reasons for which the Nazis did not win is because they run out of petrol. And as soon as they run out of petrol, then the Soviet Union and the Allies just went faster than them, because they lose the momentum of the Blitzkrieg. And also remember that the Nazis used to have the biggest float of planes. Let's say, if I don't know, they used to have like 3,000 planes, and let's say UK used to have 300. Something like this it was like the planes that Germany will have will be like 10 times bigger than the next army of planes. So then these planes only can be used with fuel. Then the production of tanks that they had also was mind-blowing, etc. And they also will produce tanks in other places as soon as also they colonize it, etc. But okay, so but that's another kind of situation. Okay, then we have that petrol becomes really important. So according with Roy Cassandra, United States goes to the Arab countries and say, hey, we're gonna secure oil because we don't want ever that to happen to the Nazis, to happen to us. Yeah? And then we have an economic system in which fossil fuels becomes primordial at the point that wars can start for it. We have not get out of this system. Yeah. And here is the situation. We don't have to go to the whole Second World War to understand that for first time in history, we have enough resources to avoid war. Because, look, we can avoid war and create peace because AI creates overproduction. But what does it mean? We had food, energy, materials, land, fossil fuels, whatever, as a reason for which wars could start. Now, we have the Ricardo equation. Ricardo is an economist prior Adam Smith, and he comes from the first kind of economic idea, yeah, that we have certain resources for which you will have to, let's say, take care. Land, labor, technology, capital. Capital is resources, machines, and we can add savings. Okay? Well, it happens that during Second World War and during First World War, you will need land, land, and land. Let me think about. Okay, let's do it like this. So before the AI, oh shit, I just passed over an hour. I will pause and I will continue.